was a decision in the Supreme Court today. Don't worry, we're going to get to the IRS. Like I say, I helped expose this outrageous scandal. We'll get to it. There's not a ton that's new. You've heard it all weekend, and you've heard all the backbenchers reading the headlines today over and over and over again. I'll get to it, and I'll give you my perspective on it. But there was an important decision in the Supreme Court today which I strongly disagree with. The court, Baltimore Sun, says police may collect DNA samples without a warrant from individuals charged with but not convicted of violent crimes. The 5-4 decision upheld the law that authorizes police in Maryland, the federal government, and about half the states to continue collecting the genetic information. The sharply divided ruling stems from a Maryland case in which a barbarian named Alonzo King was linked to a rape after his DNA was taken in an unrelated arrest. Justice Anthony Kennedy, writing for the majority, said DNA collection was a legitimate arrest booking procedure akin to fingerprinting and photographing and used for the purpose of identifying suspects. But in a blistering dissent, Justice Antonin Scalia said Maryland's law was used for far more than identification. Said the court's decision overextends police powers. He said, "Make no mistake about it, as an entirely predictable consequence of today's decision, your DNA can be taken and entered into a national DNA database if you're ever arrested, rightly or wrongly, for whatever reason." And he is exactly correct. You see, the way the Constitution has been abused in this decision, it's not limited to violent felonies or violent crimes where you haven't been convicted of anything. The issue is whether the government could collect DNA and have a database of some sort. And the answer now is yes, by a 5-4 decision. He said today's judgment will, to be sure, have the beneficial effect of solving more crimes. And again, so would the taking of DNA samples from anyone who flies on an airplane. Surely the TSC needs to know the identity of the flying public, of course, applies for a driver's license, or attends a public school. In other words, under any circumstances, then you can take DNA. So, I agree with Scalia in this one. Justice John Roberts, you know what, I don't even care what he has to say. What do you think of that one? He already diminished himself without the ability to restore his intellectual honesty on Obamacare. So I don't really care what Roberts has to say. I can't trust the integrity of his thinking process, to be quite frank about it. My attitude is this, folks. The government I don't want all these databases, all your financial information and more that you turn over to the Internal Revenue Service. Look at the mess. All this information now the government's going to get through Obamacare. It's an enormous amount of information, as you're soon about to find out. Drones, look how we accept these things. Look how they just keep popping them on us. Drone, well, it's for the air and the water. We got to make sure. And law enforcement, well, then fine. Law enforcement can use them if they're trying to track somebody, like you use a helicopter, or basically law enforcement specific circumstances, but not just to make sure everything's going okay. Hey, look at that. There's a drone. We got cameras everywhere. And by the way, when do they put these cameras up on the streets, Mr. Producer? It must be like 3 in the morning, because I never see a crew putting the cameras up. But I drive down the street, and all of a sudden there's cameras on the lights. Do you see this stuff? They just pop up. They're breeding like rabbits. So there's cameras, there's drones. Now there's going to be a DNA database for certain. There's a healthcare database where they're going to know everything from what's going on in your head and between your legs. That's right, I said it. They have databases on your financial information. The hell, folks? What do they need all this stuff for? We got to get this gun registry too, Oh, yeah. Just a matter of time. It took us 100 years to get government-run healthcare. We got to get it. And you know what? The people will relinquish their rights themselves. Yeah, we're working it over. We're working the people over. More databases. It's just, and people, they don't even pay. I don't even know, was this discussed today other than by me? Again, I wasn't listening to my colleagues. But, these decisions are issued around 10 a.m., that give or take. And, I can't wait for the same-sex one. That'll be a good one. Where a handful of lawyers in black robes get to make decisions for all of us. Oh, that'll be a good one. Can't wait. And they call this a republic. And you even have conservatives or quote-unquote originalists saying, well, the court should have the final word. Where's that written? Well, Marshall. Marbury versus Mann. No. I asked you, where's that written? Well, somebody has to have the final say. Well, that's right. It might as well be 5 people. They should always have the final say. By the way, I'm not a majoritarian. I'm not a populist. None of that stuff, too. There are ways to deal with this. I'll explain that in a couple months, too.